Hi, my name is Matthew and I'm a final year industrial engineering student. I've been working with Django for the past 2 years professionally in my own business, and so today I'm going to be showing you how you can learn Django in just 30 minutes. And so before we get started with everything, I'm just going to give a quick breakdown of this video and what we're actually going to go through. The first thing is just an introduction to Django, what it actually is all about, the requirements to actually get started, and then just look at a short application that touches on the code that you'll actually be using when you code with Django. So the first thing to note about Django is that it is a high-level Python framework for web development. And so if we break up that sentence, what it means is that firstly, Django is built using Python. So if you are not familiar with the programming language Python, then it would be better to start with learning that before you learn Django, because a lot of the things will not make sense then. The second thing is that it is a high-level framework. So what that means is that Django already removes a lot of the work for web developers, making it a lot easier to get started and just dive in. So it covers things such as admin and database management. And because it allows you to just jump in and get started, you actually are then being allowed to create secure and scalable applications and actually build them extremely fast and really, really fast, meaning within a few hours you can have a fully working application live. And so by doing all of that, it's really is just removing a lot of unnecessary work for web developers. And this you'll see in how you can create reusable apps that you can use in more than one application. So removing a lot of that work for web developers. So if we look at the requirements to actually get started, there's only two things that you really need. The first thing is non-negotiable. You actually need Python to get started. So version 2.7 or 3.6. And then the second thing is virtual environment, which you install using Python. And that is more of a recommendation than a necessity. And the reason is just because virtual environment allows you to work with Python libraries inside a certain directory instead of installing them to your actual computer. And so that way you can work with your project's code and its libraries in one small package instead of containing everything for all your projects in just one mess on your computer. So with that being said, let's jump into the actual coding application. So to make sure you have everything installed, if you go to python.org/downloads, you can then download Python for your operating system, whether that's Windows, Linux, or Mac. Just click on whichever link is for you, and then just follow the installation for Python. And then once you've installed Python, you can then use it to install virtual env by just going into your command prompt or your terminal and running pip install virtual env. And that will install it for you. Okay, so with Python and virtual environment installed, what you want to do is go into the terminal or command prompt and navigate into a folder that you'll be using for this project. So mine is the Django in 30 directory, and if I list everything out, then you can see there's nothing in it. It's an empty directory. So this is where we're going to be working, and the first thing I'm going to do is type virtual env env. And what this command does is it creates a virtual environment for us, which will be used to house all of the Python libraries that we'll need for this project, so that our actual computer is not installing any of these libraries. So now if I list everything out, you can see I have the environment folder. And so on Mac, to activate it, you'll say source env/bin/activate. And if you're on Windows, you would just type env scripts activate. It does the exact same thing. So then once you've done that, you'll see that you get this env on the left hand side of your working directory, and that means that the virtual environment is activated. So now we can actually install Django, and all you have to do is say pip install Django, and that's going to install it into this virtual environment so that it's contained in this project. And if we were to deactivate the virtual environment, then Django would not be installed on our local machine. So now what we can do is we can actually use Django to create a project. So to do that, we can say Django-admin start project and we can call this DJ30. So now if I list everything out, you can see I have this DJ30 folder, which is the actual project that we've created. And so if we were to go and open this into Sublime Text, then we can start working from there. Okay, so here in Sublime Text, I have the Django in 30 folder open, and inside there we have DJ30 and the env folder. And so the first thing I'm going to do is rename DJ30. And I'm going to call it src, which is short for source. And that's just telling us that inside the source folder is all of the code for this project. So if you remember, DJ30 was created when we ran the Django admin start project command in the terminal. And basically this is just the core of our project. It's housing the settings and the URL configuration for the actual project. So I'm not going to look at those files just yet. But if we go into the terminal and just list everything out, I'm going to change directory into the source folder. And if we list everything in there, you can see we have the manage.py file. And so this allows me to run a few commands. So the first thing I'm going to do is say python manage.py migrate. And what that does is it makes migrations to the database for this project. As you can see, there's quite a few here. And so if I go back into Sublime Text, now you can see that it created this db.sqlite3 file, and that is a database file, SQLite3. So it's all here in binary. And so you can actually specify the type of database that you want to work with, MySQL, Postgres, but SQLite3 is the default that Django comes with. And that's fine for here for local purposes. So now if we want to see this running as a server, we can say python manage.py run server. And that will actually start a local server on our computer at this 127.0.0.1.8,000 URL. So now we can actually go into our browser and go to that URL, and now you can see this page is being loaded. And this we didn't create, this was Django. This is just Django telling us the install worked successfully, congratulations. And this is just the page that it shows. So now it actually gives us quite a few links. We can go to the Django documentation, their own tutorial, the community, and then the release notes for their latest version, which is Django 2.0. So before we get started with our own app, I first want to mention that the Django documentation is probably one of the best things about Django. Everything and anything you want to know about Django is well documented on their documentation page, which you can go to actually from the startup of our project. You can just click on this link and it will open the documentation right here. So everything you want to know, you can find right here. But so to get started, let's go into Sublime Text, and what we're going to do is we're going to create another app which will be inside our source folder. And so this is just going to be a basic app, something that just shows us the basic create, retrieve, update, delete views. And so to do that, we'll just create a blog post kind of app. So to do that, to start your own app, we just say python manage.py start app. And then we call the name of the app, which will just say posts. So now if we list everything out, you can see there's this posts folder. And so if we go back into Sublime Text, now we have posts as a folder in the same directory that has the DJ30 folder. And so whenever you run that command manage.py start app, all your apps will go inside the directory which contains your project. So every time you create an app, what you want to do is go into your settings. So in DJ30 settings.py, what you want to do is scroll down all the way to installed apps. And there you want to put the name of the app, which in this case is posts. And so this allows you to basically keep track of all the migrations for your app. So now, if we were to go and create a model inside this app, then inside our settings, it would take record of that app actually being there. So to get started, to create a model, we're going to say class post, and it's going to come from the Django's models.model. And this is a built-in model that Django has created for us, and we can just reference it like this. So a model is just a way of creating some form of data. So if we think about a post has a title, and we give all the fields the parameters for this post model in this kind of fashion. So we'll say the title is a character field, and maybe it has a description, and the description is a text field. And we can go on and give all these different types of fields. We can give it a timestamp and give it a date time field. We can give it an author field, and so on and so on. And all these fields are referenced inside Django's documentation. So there are way too many to go through in just one tutorial, but you can go through it here and find all the different types as well. And so when we specify certain fields, there are some parameters that you need to actually include. So for example, in a character field, you need to specify the maximum length. And so we'll just say 120 characters is the maximum length for the title field of any post that you create. And then just to help with the representation of the model, we can say define string, and that takes in self, and then we just say return self.title. So every time you see this post in the admin, it's going to show you the name, the title of the post as a way of referencing to it. So every time you create a model inside your models.py, you need to make migrations to it. So I'm just going to clear everything here, and we're going to say Python manage.py make migrations. And so now you can see it says here migrations for posts, and it creates this actual migration file inside our migrations folder inside the posts app. So now you can see posts migrations, and then this 0001 initial, here it's creating the fields for the post model that we just created inside this models file. And it's giving it an ID, a title, and a description. And so this is basically Django's way of creating the actual models in the database. And so every time you make migrations, you then need to complete those migrations by saying migrate. And so now you see it says applying those migrations. So you have to do this every single time you make some kind of model in your models.py. And so let's go and run the server now. So we'll say Python manage.py run server. And what I want to introduce you to now is the admin. So if you go to the normal URL for this Django project and you type in /admin, then it takes you to this login form. But we don't actually have an admin user yet, so we need to create that. So exit out of the server, and I'm going to clear again. And we're going to say Python manage.py create super user. So that's going to create an admin kind of user. And so we'll say the username is admin. I'll leave my email address empty, and we'll enter a password which just has to have 8 characters. And now we'll say manage.py run server. Go back in here, we'll refresh the server, and we'll type in our username and our password, and then log in, and look at this. This is the actual Django admin URL that we're actually loading here. This is a view that Django has created. We didn't do this. This is literally just Django giving us this backend administration site for us. And this is also one of the highlights of Django, why it's so amazing, because this was all done for us. So this is actually a place where we can take record and actually monitor all the models that we've created. So if we go back into Sublime Text and go into posts admin.py, we can register all the models that we've created. So I'm going to import the model we just created, and I'm going to say from .models import post. And then we can register this model by saying admin.site.register post. And now if we just refresh this, now you can see that we have the posts model, which is showing here, and we can actually go to it and add a post. And now it shows us those fields, title and description. And we can say the title is, this is our first post, and this is some content. And we click save, and there we go. There's our first post that we're actually creating. So with all of that done, now we can actually start looking at how to view this data. And Django makes it really easy. It gives us this views.py file, which is inside our posts app. So if you go into views.py, we're going to create our first view that will show that data. And so as part of the CRUD views, which is create, retrieve, update, delete, one of those views is the actual list view, and that's not included in the CRUD statement, but it is a kind of retrieve view. So we want to list all the posts in a view. And so to do this, we'll just say define post list view. And Django allows us to create these things called function-based views. And so a function-based view takes in a request, and then it shows data in some kind of way. So the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to say return, because every function has to return something. And we're going to render that request. And when we use the render function, it takes in a request, and it takes in some template, and it takes in some context. And the context is a dictionary that has something inside it. So what do we want to show here? We want to show all the posts. So first we actually have to get the post object. So we say from .models import post. And now we use Django's query set abilities, which allows us to filter all the models of a certain kind. And so we can do this in the following way. We can say post objects equals to, and then we filter the post model. So we say post.objects.all. So this query set is getting all the post objects, just as simple as that. And then we have to reference this object inside our context. So how we do that is we say the post objects in these abbreviations here is this is the key value, or the key, and this is the value. So the post objects value, this list here, is being referenced with this key being post objects. And then we pass in this context dictionary into the render. And you'll see how this works in a second. But first we have to specify a template name, which will actually be the HTML that shows this data. So I'm going to say index.html. And then inside posts, I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to say templates. And then inside templates, we create another new folder and call that posts. And then inside posts, we create another new file, and I'm going to save that as index.html. And so to start that, I'm just going to create some basic HTML, and then in here, let's say we'll put an HTML, an h1 tag, and we'll say this is our list of posts. And so back in the views, I'm actually just going to change this to become posts/index.html, because that is referencing this directory inside the posts app. So it's saying inside posts, look for index.html. And then the last thing we need to do is actually show this view and reference it to a URL. So inside the DJ30 folder, inside urls.py, I'm going to delete all those comments. And what I'm going to do is import the view that we just created. So this post list view, inside URLs, I'm going to say from posts.views import post list view. And so here we're going to create a path. And this path is to a certain URL. So I'm going to say path, and we'll say posts. And then a comma, and then the name of the view function that will be used at this URL request. So basically, when someone goes to the 127.001.8000/posts, it's going to redirect that, or not redirect, but take that user, take its request and post it through to this post list view. And that's going to go straight to this view function, where it will then grab all the post objects, pass in the data into a context object, and then render the data to this index.html file, which is this right here. So right now there's no way of us actually showing the data, but we can do that by actually referencing the context variable, and that is this post objects. So if we go in here, inside double curly brackets, we can pass that in and just say post objects, and now that list will actually show there. So if we go back to the server, we can see it's still working, everything's perfect, and now we just have to go to 127/posts. And there we go. Now we see here, this is our list of posts, and it's showing us a query set with this is our first post inside it. And so what we'll actually want to do with this list is loop through it. So if you're familiar with Python, then you should be familiar with for loops. And so the way we use for loops in Django's smart templates is by saying for post in post objects. So again, we're referencing that context variable, and then we just say post and then end for, and I'm going to delete this line over there. And so let's go back inside here and recheck that, and now there we go, this is our first post. So again, I'm going to go back into the admin and we'll create another one, and we'll say this is our second post, title, and this is some context, and we'll just save that. Now if we go back in here and refresh this, then there it's showing it. This is our second post title. So we can actually just make this a little bit better and put this in p tags. And now if we come back here, refresh, there we go. So now this is actually listing out all our data. So if we just recap through everything we just did, we've got the model. The model is describing what kind of data we want to show. And in this case, it's a post. And the post has certain information, a title and a description. And you can put whatever you want here. You could put an author, you could put a timestamp, so like the date you actually created it. You could put pretty much anything you want. So I'm just going to comment these out. And then in the admin, we registered this actual model. We imported it with a relative import. So inside posts, this admin file, we're using relative imports because the models file is inside the same folder as the admin file. And then we're just calling admin.site.register. And then inside the views, we're creating this function-based view, which takes in a request whenever someone goes to that URL. Then we are query setting the actual object. So we're grabbing, in this instance, we're grabbing all of the post objects, and then we're passing this object as the value for the key inside this context dictionary, which we pass into the render function. And this render function will always just take the request, the name of the HTML file, and the context for it. And then lastly, the URL is basically telling Django to which URL path the user must go to in order to actually display the data according to a certain view. So when you go to /admin, it's using the admin site URLs to show us that actual admin site. And then when you go to /posts, it's using the post list view, which we created to show you the data on this index.html file. And then inside index.html, we are looping through the post object's context variable, which we specified in the view over here. And we are just using simple Python syntax with a for loop, and then just specifying end for, and then creating a paragraph tag with post being the incremented value through the post objects list. And that is what's giving us this display over here. And so that is the basics of Django. Obviously, there is a lot that could not be covered in this, but the basic premise is the idea of creating models which houses the data for our project and then displaying that with a view which is referenced via some path or some URL that you need to go to on our website and then is rendered with HTML using Django's smart HTML templates. So if you like this tutorial, then please subscribe down below and give us a like, and thank you for watching.